Hi, welcome to the very first episode of Weird Art History. I'm Liz, and if you're wondering why I'm qualified to talk about art history, I'm not. So I minored in art history in college while I was getting my BFA, and I have always had a really just deep love of learning, and especially like just super weird stuff. I love being that person at the party with all the insane facts. Uh, So I did a whole bunch of research and I want to give you guys some insane facts for parties. Or, just daily life. Or if you need to, get someone to leave you alone. So consider this a friendly internet info dump. Now that we've gotten a little bit acquainted, or at least you're acquainted with me, let's talk about sea unicorns. And I bet you can guess what the real world animal this is supposed to be is, right? Yeah, it's a narwhal. The thing I'm drawing right now is supposed to be a narwhal. Well, kind of. So, hear me out. According to Histoire Générale des Drogues by Pierre Pomé, published in Paris in 1694, and this is just a quick disclaimer because I couldn't find a translation, so I did use a translator app for this because my French borders on non-existent. Uh, the narwhal, or sea unicorn, is a large fish that some believe to be a species of whale found in abundance in the Arctic or North Sea, principally along the coasts of Iceland and Greenland. This marine monster has at the end of its nose a white, shiny, lustrous horn of a spiral shape. The text then goes on to describe a creature that a Monsieur Dumontel alleged that he encountered near Saint-Domingue, which we now know as Haiti, in 1644. Dumontel described the creature as being 18 feet long, predominantly blue and silver spangled, with a yellow belly, brown head, black horn, and with vermilion red fins like galley oars. He claimed the upper portion of its body was covered in scales, the tail forked, and the head was the size of a horse's, in addition to being roughly the same shape. Much like a unicorn, it had a horn on its head. Dumontel's account continues that the creature fought valiantly and implies that had it not been beached, it probably could have either escaped or killed some of the men fighting it. They throw a feast, eat it. They describe it as delicate, and then the head ends up in the possession of some important guy in Saint-Domingue. He keeps it for a couple years before gifting it to someone else, who tries to take it back to Europe on a boat, but the boat runs aground, all of their belongings are lost, and the head of the sea unicorn, which is definitely not a narwhal, is lost forever. Pomé concludes that we should all be fools to believe that which we call a unicorn horn belongs to a terrestrial animal, and it is clearly just the tusk of a narwhal. However, the main takeaway, I think, from this story is that in the book, which I've linked in the notes and you can go directly to that page from there, there's a depiction of both a sea unicorn and a narwhal. The sea unicorn is what I used as the reference for this study that I'm drawing right now. It very much appears to be based off Dumontel's description. It's reminiscent of how narwhals were depicted prior to the 1600s. And quickly, I just want to interject that obviously, this was a white person problem. Indigenous folks who lived around narwhals were clearly capable of depicting them very accurately, and there is so much beautiful iconography and representation of narwhals from cultures who actually interact with them. The Swedish writer and cartographer, Olaus Magnus, depicts a sea unicorn in his Carta Marina, where it has a snout and appears almost furry. Naturalist Konrad Gesner's Historia Animalium from 1558 contains a similar creature, though this one appears more scaly and is possessing of very pointy teeth. It's also featured next to an illustration of a sawfish, because apparently people thought they were related. Oftentimes, people who were not from areas where narwhal are native didn't have a lot to go on. They assumed fish had scales, they were working off of other artists' interpretations of them. They were going off of eyewitness accounts, which were, like, Dumontels, maybe exaggerated or just inaccurate. And sometimes they were just drawing them based off of their skulls. In this digital age, we know that your brain can have a hard time understanding things presented to you in an unexpected or unknown way. Whether it's the infamous dress that was either gold and white or black and blue, or those photos people make listicles out of where things are taken at just the wrong angle, your brain uses past experience to do the best job it can. As time passed, so did the sea unicorn. As evidenced by Histoire Générale des Drogues, Europeans were already moving away from depicting narwhals as sea monsters by the late 1600s. And by the 1700s, the sea unicorn would fall by the wayside in favor of, figuring out what a narwhal actually looked like. And so, we are forever graced with images of the mildly horrific sea unicorn. It may not live in our oceans, but if you so choose, it can live on in your heart. Before I go, I just want to say thank you all so much for watching. I hope you learned a weird fact to take to your next awkward dinner with your boyfriend's family. And I sincerely hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, I'd really appreciate a like and a subscribe if you're not already. And if you're feeling really freaky, you could leave a comment. I hope I'll see you next week for the second episode of Weird Art History. Later, nerds!